Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, January 30th. Oh my goodness. We are at the end of the first month of the year. Before I introduce today's guest and tell you what we're doing here, you hear me say it every week. We're 1/12 of the way through the year now. Now, that may seem like there's a lot of time left, and the truth is there are a lot of months left. There's still 11 months for you to do the right activity to achieve or exceed your financial goals by the end of the year. But here's my coaching for everybody who's listening. If you have been taking it easy in January, and I know many people do, they'll say things like, oh, nobody wants to talk right after the first of the year, and they're still recovering for the holidays. I'll really go full force in February. Well, if that has been your story up until now is the time to get busy. And I'm hoping that you've been busy all month, because we all know that prospecting today in any way, shape, or form, however you do it, typically does not result in appointments tomorrow. And without appointments, you can't close business. So I hope you've been putting in the right effort. And if not, now is the time to get busy. I get a lot of calls in October, November from panicked salespeople saying, Jeff, I'm not going to hit my goal. What do I do? And my answer is always the same. You should have called me 10 months ago. So don't wait. Now is the time to move forward. If you have not been with us before, I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with individuals and organizations internationally to help them get measurable and sustainable sales increases. And if you have joined us before, you know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And today is no exception, my friends. Today's guest is an international best-selling author of over a dozen books in the areas of mental performance, such as speed reading, memory, and concentration. His latest books include titles such as Speed Reading, Learn to Read a 200-page book in an hour. I need to know that. Mind Mapping, which I think I studied years ago, but don't exactly remember what it is, because we're going to ask him about that. And Everyday Memory, easy ways to remember names, dates, facts, lectures, and more. Boy, oh boy, do I need that. He helps people remove blocks, automate sales, and win faster. Please welcome today's guest, Kam Knight. Good morning, Kam.
Thank you, Jeff, for that awesome introduction. Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstanding, and I hope you are too. Kam, before I get to the 1,000,001 questions that I have for you, because you're an interesting character and you have a lot of stuff that can really help us all, why don't you give us the 2 to 3 minute version of your background? What brought you up to this point?
All right, great. So my name is Kam Knight. I am a coach, international speaker, and author of a dozen books, many of which you see behind me, in the area of mental, physical, and emotional performance that have sold over 500,000 copies and have over 10,000 reviews on Amazon. And now I talk about a concept called internal resistance. And how I got to it is because most of my life, I was a fairly driven individual. And what I like to tell people is that it's kind of hard not to be living in this time where there's just so much personal development content and everyone is telling you to do more and be your best self. So growing up, I always wanted to do more and have more and be more in life. And although I had my fair share of success, I always felt like I missed the mark, fell short, or the success was much more difficult and stressful than it needed to be. And I always wondered why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it. Now, at the time, there were no clear answers. The best answers I was coming across related to beliefs or that you need discipline. And those are part of the equation, but I thought there was more to it. And over the last 15 years, that question did linger in my mind. And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars I attended, the more I learned about the complexities of the human brain. And unknown to me, my unconscious was taking all that information and processing it, where one moment about 5 to 6 years ago, I had this epiphany and I was like, wait a minute, there's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. There's a part of our mind built to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance, and it's this brick wall that we hit anytime we want to do something, but we can't, no matter how much we want to do it.
Fascinating. By the way, I forgot to say, if anybody's watching us live, the stream's live to 3 different platforms. Some of them allow you to put in comments or questions. If you have any questions for Kam, please put them in the comments and I'll pass them on. Sure. I'm going to come back to you. Mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about, but we'll come back to it later. Sure. So you actually, no, I do want to talk about it now. You say our brain is designed to hold us back.
Yes.
I know that there's a famous book that I read and I've read it a couple of times, and now the name is just slipping right out of I need that memory course. It's Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And in there, he says that we're born with a success mechanism in our brain that's driven to make us successful. So he says we've got a success mechanism, and you say our brain is designed to hold us back. Is it both? Is it one or the other? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And I know that the work you do focuses heavily on internal resistance. So I'd like to know about, can both function at the same time? And what is internal resistance? How does it affect us? And why does our brain want to hold us back?
All right, great. So great point about what Cybernetics said. And I would say it's both. It's a little from column A and it's a little from column B. And it is happening both at the same time. And to understand what's going on, the part of the brain that creates wants, we have one part of the brain that creates wants, and in many ways is unrestrained. So it's creating endless wants one after another. Its job was never to check to see if a want was achievable, enjoyable, or worth pursuing. Its only job.
I'm sorry, when you say wants, I want this, I want that.
Yeah, wants and desires.
Yeah, we want everything.
Exactly, more or less. And that's because of this mechanism. It's unrestrained. It was never meant to check to see if a want is achievable, worth doing, or even safe to go after. Its only job is to create wants, and it's creating wants essentially one after another at a pace faster than any one person can achieve. And then we have another part of the brain that checks to see if that want is achievable, fulfilling, and worth doing. And if this part of the brain doesn't give the green light, we can't act. So what's really important to understand is the brain can both create a desire for something and at the same time hold us back from it. So if people have felt this dynamic where they're like, I want to do this thing, but I can't, and they have this tug of war, well, this is what's going on. So yes, it is true that we are built to have success and we're built to have desires and go after them, but then we also have a part that holds us back. And there's a lot of focus and conversation around this and not so much on this, which is why I talk so much about this. And I want to talk a little bit more about how this plays out. So anytime a desire, a course of action, or an option stands before us, it gets evaluated by this part of the brain using a whole host of criteria. And if the desire is not in line with any of the criteria, resistance will put the brakes on that decision. And so a great analogy for this is standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Every decision, or in this case, every desire or want that comes up must go through them. If even one of the members is against the idea, it will not pass. So what that means is it doesn't matter oftentimes how much motivation you have, how simple the solution is, or even how much benefit you can derive. If this part doesn't give the green light, you can't act. But what's even more nuanced is that both parts can actually get in the way. The parts that create wants can get in the way, and so can the parts that create resistance. A lot of times when we talk about blocks, we start focusing on resistance, but we don't actually look at our wants ourselves. Now, I know I threw a lot out there, so go ahead and shoot any questions for more clarification.
Yes, you are absolutely right, my friend. And the first thing that popped into my mind was you were talking about the safety. So you're saying that when we have a want, the brain doesn't think about whether it's safe or not, or it does?
Yeah, so the part of the brain that creates wants, it doesn't necessarily check to see if that want is achievable or fulfilling. This part's only job is just to create wants, and it's cranking out endless wants one after another. And that's because we have another part that's supposed to check it. And this part will check that want to see if it's safe, worth doing, fulfilling, and all that stuff. And the way it does that is by going through that host of criteria. And this is where our challenges of our own wants come into play, because our brain can create so many wants that it's difficult to move in any one. Or it can create conflicting wants, meaning having one requires giving up another. And I'll give a couple of examples. Some people want to have success, but at the same time, free time. Some people want to find that special someone, but at the same time, date others. So there's an inherent conflict there. Having one means giving up another. But the wanting mechanism doesn't necessarily see that. And so it'll create desires for both where we can't move in any direction. So that's just one challenge of our wants. There's other challenges it creates too.
So,
It's wild, right?
yeah. Well, I'm thinking, as soon as you said that, in my mind, I said, yeah, I want to summit Everest. It
Yes.
seems really amazingly cool to do. I mean, not everybody can do it, but I've seen the movie Everest. It looks
Yeah.
terrifying. People die. It's cold, and I hate being cold. So
Yeah.
even though I want to have the achievement of standing on top of the world, I'm just not willing to do what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
And I don't even know for me. Yeah, I do know for me. It's not as much about the safety. Would I die? I've done other stuff where I mean, I've jumped out of a
Yeah.
plane more than once. I drive like a maniac. So it's not the fear of dying, but it's the fear of the pain of the cold. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I live in New York. I'm about an hour away from
Yeah.
New York City, and I've been at the New York Marathon at the finish line. Nobody looks happy. Everybody looks like they're cold, So, and I don't want to go through the pain. So is that my brain protecting me from even though I want something, saying, is it how bad do you want it? What price are you willing to pay? What's that protection mechanism actually telling me?
So oftentimes when I talk about resistance, a lot of times people's minds go to, oh, is it a protection mechanism? Is it protecting me? Oftentimes there's a strong protection component to it, but there are causes of resistance that aren't so much protection and survival. It gets pretty nuanced, like I said. But in this case, it is because we all know we have a defense mechanism, right? And that defense mechanism is designed to protect us. But at the most basic level, what is it protecting us from? Is it protecting us from failure? Is it protecting us from rejection? Is it protecting us from mistakes? With my model, I believe it's protecting us from pain, whether that's physical pain, mental pain, or emotional pain. So wherever there is pain or a potential for it, resistance will come up. Now, for different people, different things cause pain. So for somebody who's introverted, being in a social situation creates immense amount of pain. For a person who is social, they don't experience as much pain, so they don't have much resistance when it goes out time to go to social events or networking. Now, some people experience more physical pain doing things. Like you said, a lot of times when you've seen people, marathon runners at the finish line, they don't look happy. They look like they're in pain. But to them, it's not as painful as it looks to you. To them, there's this strong feeling of joy and accomplishment that's going on.
Right.
But it doesn't matter what the pain is. All that matters is if there's going to be pain or potential for it, resistance will say, we're not going to do that. We're going to block it. And what's really important to understand is that pain can come from physical, which is getting cut, hurt, scrape. It could come from mental, meaning certain mental activities like thinking, problem solving, and learning creates a lot of strain on the brain. And for some people, that's too much pain that it causes resistance. And for some people, it's emotional. And as I mentioned, for some people who are sensitive to the thoughts, judgments, and actions and reactions of others, it creates a lot of emotional pain. So for them, resistance will come up when they do things that are going to be more social. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you know how in cartoons, you see the light bulb going off over something. Yeah. So I just had a light bulb. So does this explain? And I think it does. Does this explain why so many salespeople have a strong desire to be successful, but are unwilling to do the things that it takes to do them, like prospecting? I'm just going to use one piece as an example, and there's a gazillion ways to prospect. And when I work with salespeople, I expose them to all of them and suggest they use what I call a blended approach. But let's take cold calling on the telephone.
Yes.
Nobody likes doing it. Anybody who likes doing it is anybody who tells me they like doing it is either lying or crazy. I think it should be part of almost every salesperson's prospecting mix. So are you suggesting that the reason that salespeople don't want to do it is because it's that resistance due to the pain in their minds of getting rejected, not knowing what to say, and all the other things that could go wrong other than, oh, yes, I'd love to meet with you? Am I on the right track here?
100%, 100%. So what's going on is there's a desire. I want to sell. I want to make money. I want to have a good life. And then that desire gets filtered through resistance. Oh, I have to make phone calls. And the resistance is going, what if the person rejects me? What if they hang up on me? What if they don't buy and I waste time? And based on what's going on internally for them, meaning if rejection is painful to them, then the resistance is gonna go, oh, rejection creates pain. And if there is pain, I'm gonna prevent or block it. And so that it will create this almost like this invisible wall where they can't do it, where they want to do it, but they just can't even, the phone's right there. They can pick it up, but their hands doesn't even move to allow them because that's what's happening. And what ends up happening is what I call tricks of resistance. And you alluded to this earlier, and I'm going to bring this up now. So when resistance stops us, it doesn't tell us it's stopping us. It doesn't say, hey, Jeff, you know, that thing you want to do, like calling clients or selling, well, it creates too much pain for us when we get rejected. Or when a client doesn't say yes, we feel bad that we wasted all this time. So I can't let you do it. That's not what resistance does. It manifests other ways. And like I said, it manifests in tricks. And our resistance has all sorts of tricks up our sleeves to keep us from doing what it wants to do. And one of the tricks that I know you experience with a lot of your clients is to get into busy work. So they start doing everything but the sales. And they do that because they feel like they're making progress, but it keeps them active. So they think like they're doing something productive without actually doing the thing that they should be. But the other way it shows up is that they'll put off the task or activity for later. So remember how you introduced the show saying, hey, if you were thinking that nobody wants to be sold after the holidays, let's do it after the holidays. Well, that's a trick of resistance. Resistance is saying, oh, nobody wants to buy something now. Why don't we wait until after the month? And as long as it makes us wait, resistance wins because it keeps us from doing that thing. And what's crazy is once that month is over, resistance will find another trick to keep us procrastinating. We're like, oh, it's February. I've got this stuff. Let me finish these things on my plate. And once I get that handle, I have more focus. So why don't I do it in March? March comes, it's like, oh, the weather's getting better. I put a lot of hard work in January and February. Why don't I do it in February? And then next thing you know, it's November and December, and they're calling you going, hey, I don't think I'm going to make my numbers for the year. I need help. So this is a trick of resistance. But these tricks go even more nuanced, meaning a person can fall into a heightened sense of planning, where they spend all their time planning what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And I say this as a trick because when we spend all our time planning, we're not spending any time doing. And because we're not doing, resistance wins in keeping us from moving forward. And it gets even deeper because a lot of times people won't plan, but they will fall into a pattern of perfectionism where they have to perfect their sales pitch and what they're going to say and how they're going to say and how they're going to handle rejections. And as they're spending all that time in perfecting, they're not actually going out and doing. And as long as they're not doing, resistance wins again. So what's really important about the resistance piece is oftentimes your brain isn't going to tell you you're in resistance, and it's not going to give you a reason. It's just going to show up in these tricks, and it gives you the illusion that you're making progress when in reality, you're really holding yourself back.
Yeah. So I just realized I've been calling resistance something else, and I call it head trash. But I think you're talking about exactly the same thing.
Yes.
And it seems to me that's also why salespeople often don't follow up enough because, well, what if I get rejected? What if? And we're always worried about that pain. And look, there's a price to pay for everything.
Yeah.
I use this example fairly regularly. You don't go to the gym, lift weights once, and I'm pumped. You got to go regularly, and it's the same thing in sales. You've got to prospect consistently. You got to follow up. There's a bunch of things you have to do if you're going to be successful. And in sales, it's useful to realize the facts. And the facts are not everybody's going to buy, not everybody's going to return your call, not everybody's going to return your email, but you need to be doing, you need to get past that resistance and do enough of the things that you need to do so that you can have the success, because that's the price we pay. Prospecting is the price we pay to have conversations. I just had this conversation yesterday with a friend. I do stand-up comedy because I don't get enough attention during the week. I need more attention from audiences. And I was talking to a newer comedian friend, and she was
So can I just interrupt and use this example to drive a point?
Sure.
So you're obviously not someone who is introverted or socially anxious.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So for you, there's no resistance to people, to the point where you actually have the show, you go out and work with clients and in groups, and it's not enough where now you need to be on stage to get more attention. Now, for a person who has, let's just say, aversion to the thoughts, judgments, actions, and reactions of other people, it's going to be a completely different story. That stuff creates so much pain for them that not only are they hesitant to do that, but they orchestrate their entire life so they never have to do that. They pick jobs, careers, they date a certain way in ways that helps them weave around a lot of the challenges they might experience with something like that you're doing.
And the possible pain that might come from it, as opposed to going after it for the possible reward. And so I was telling, she was telling me about a gig she's doing. It's Friday. She's doing it tonight. Actually, it might be in your state. I'll have to look.
Okay.
And anyways, she was sending me some notes that she had on what she's going to do. And part of it, and by the way, she's a dear friend who I adore, amazingly talented at her job and a budding comedian. But she said, here's what I'm planning on doing. And she's planning on taking a flip chart on stage and listing all the phrases that have the F word in it and making comedy comments about that. I said, okay, so have you listed all the possible F words? And do you know what you're going to say about them? She goes, well, I've listed a bunch of them, but I'm going to wing it, with what's about that. I said, ooh, I'm not sure that winging it is going to be the best idea, especially since you're a new comedian. If you think you're going to stand on a stage with 10, 20, 50, 100 people waiting for something brilliant to come out, what if you don't? And I said, the writing is the price we pay to be able to get the good stuff, which is the performing. And look, I hate writing comedy. I don't want to sit down and put in the time and effort to do it, but I love performing. I have a gig Sunday. I know exactly what I'm going to say and by the way, I'm not saying I'm better or worse than her. It's just that she's a little more inexperienced. And personally, I'm not willing to take the risk of getting, even though I'm very fast on my feet. I do it in front of corporate audiences all the time, come up with stuff on the spot. I'm not willing to take the risk in front of a bunch of people who pay good money to be entertained, that I'm not going to come up with something. So interesting.
So this is actually something that'll also help us understand resistance and the tricks is a lot of times resistance comes up usually because of beliefs. If we don't believe something is possible, of course, resistance is going to hold us back. But what's interesting is if we might think something is possible. So for her, she thinks that she can go up on stage and deliver. But if we don't think it's possible for us, or deep down we don't feel deserving or that we are enough to have success, then resistance will keep us from doing the thing. And a lot of times, how the tricks show up is in lack of preparation. So the resistance will say, hey, we don't need to prepare. We're going to do great. And then when we go on stage, we bomb and the tricks win because it prevents us from having the success that we want. So this is really important to understand too. When a person says, no, I'm just going to wing it, I'm not going to put in all this effort, it's usually because there's a trick that is coming out or playing out to keep us from being successful and getting to the next level. And what's really important and that I have learned the hard way is that when I look at successful people, some people at the echelon of success, and when you look at their stories, they did whatever it took to get the success they needed. Whereas most people just want to do whatever they feel like doing in the moment. And I'll give an example. For a long time, I wasn't good at communicating and I was terrified to be on stage. And even this podcast, like my first couple of podcasts, I was terrified for like a week or two, and I couldn't think about or focus on anything else but the podcast. So my work slid for first couple of weeks because I knew this podcast was coming. And now I could have said things like, I'm going to wing it, but I use the principle of I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the success I want. So I would literally think about all the questions that the host would ask, write out answers for all those questions, and then I would practice it. And then I had my friends do mock interviews with me to get that comfortability. So when I finally got the podcast, even or did the interview, even though I may have been nervous, I set myself up for more success. And almost always the host loved what I said and wanted to bring me back. So although I could have winged it, I wanted to do whatever it took to be successful. And that's the length that went. And I want people to understand that I want people to have that kind of thinking when it comes to sales, not just winging it, but doing everything you can to set yourself up for success. And even if it doesn't happen, you don't stop. You just figure out what you could have done differently. And then there's one part of the equation where it's not about what you could have prepared for, but actually just consistently doing it. So for me to get to this point where I could talk to you as comfortably as I am and be as eloquent as I am, because you don't hear me saying too many uhs and ums and losing my train of thought, which is what used to happen, I had to just keep doing it and keep showing up, even though there were moments where some podcasts didn't go well. And some hosts ended the podcast early because, I wasn't doing well. But I want people to have that thinking.
Yeah. Thanks very much. We got to go. No, I'm just kidding. You're doing great, Ken. So the preparation and the rehearsal is the price we pay to have what we want. And this was actually a revelation to me when I started doing comedy, because the best comedians make it look like they're making it up off the top of their head the whole time.
Exactly.
They're not. They're not. Look, I hang out with a lot of people way more talented and way more experienced than me. They may not know the exact order that they're going to say stuff, but they're saying stuff that they've said. I mean, Robin Williams was, an outlier. That guy he just had that mind that could do it. But, I'm telling you, I'll be talking for about 12 minutes on Sunday. I know what's happening in minute 2 and minute 5. I know the journey I'm planning on taking the audience on so that I can get them to the point where I can introduce the next comedian and it all works out. And it's the preparation that, I also have experience. I mean, I've been on stages for years and years and years doing sales training, so I'm comfortable on stage. But the comedy audience is somewhat different. Again, because when I'm doing training, I'm getting paid by a corporation typically, and they've created an audience. But the audience in a comedy club, each of them have paid $10, $20, $50, $100. And it's like, make me laugh, funny man. So I'm not willing to get up there on a maybe, even though I do have a quick mind and I'm good at comebacks. And of course, sometimes the audience will shout something out. That's a lot of fun. But I know what's going to happen all the time. So you suggest that there's a not commonly known cause of resistance that most of us are actually experiencing. What is that, and how does that affect us?
Okay, so a lot of causes of resistance. Let me backtrack and say some causes of resistance we've kind of heard and we know about. So the concept of beliefs, I'm sure anyone who listens to podcasts or reads personal development has come across it, or habits. If we're doing something that we haven't built a habit for sure resistance will arise. Or if we're doing something that's going to move us out of our comfort zone, resistance will show up. So those are very commonly known reasons. But there are other causes of resistance that doesn't get talked about. And I'll talk about one of them, and that's authority issues. And authority issues relate to our unconsciously held attitudes toward authority figures such as parents, police officers, priests, and even personal development coaches like ourselves. And I'm going to extend that definition to anyone who tells you or makes you feel obligated to do something. And I'm going to share a really quick story to help people understand what I mean. So growing up, I had a friend whose parents nagged him about cleaning his room. They nagged and pestered him so much that he became spiteful towards them and unknowingly carried that spite for decades. So as an adult, he lived a messy life simply out of spite. He didn't know why until he saw a therapist that his messy lifestyle was triggered by his parents from 20 years ago. the resistance was unconscious. He didn't know why he couldn't stay clean and organized, no matter how much he wanted to and tried. And so what happens is if a person grows up in an environment where people are always telling them what to do and how to do it and what not to do and how not to do it, at a certain point, the brain gets fed up and doesn't want to listen to or do anything they say. So even when we grow up and want to do those things, we can't because the authority issue response kicks in. And so this is a cause of a resistance that's not survival or safety related. It's something else going on at play. And what's really interesting about this is that oftentimes the person is resisting the advice because they want to hurt the person who is giving advice, or they want to outsmart them. Be like, yeah, I know you're telling me to do this, but I'm going to show you I don't have to do that and still get success. But what ends up happening is it's usually they hurt themselves and they end up looking like the fools. Because when they don't listen to their parents, it doesn't affect their health, it affects theirs. And when they don't listen to the teacher, it doesn't affect the teacher's grade, it affects theirs. And they might think they're outsmarting, but now they're creating a life for themselves where they don't have the education and they're not making as much money they could and all of that. Now, how this shows up as adults is these people will go out and hire coaches like you and me, pay good money for it, and then not take the advice they give us because the authority issue kicks in. And I know you experience it because I experience this, and most of us coaches experience it too. The people come to us, they pay us money, and then we tell them what they need to do, and they resist it.
Yeah, I've absolutely had clients where, they're paying me money like one of the services, excuse me, I provide is a fractional or outsourced sales management.
Yeah.
And I've had clients where I'll be working with their team for a while, and they'll tell me to do something else. No, that's not what we need to do. And they'll fight with me. And I'm like, you're paying me for my expertise.
Yeah.
You're paying me because you told me you don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
Why would you possibly be arguing with me when I'm the expert? And I'm not bragging when I say I'm an expert, but that's my expertise. And it's always stunning to me. And
it's an old wound showing up. And what I want to say is what they're really doing is they're wanting to push up against an authority because that's what they experienced when they were young, and they're just recreating it as an adult, and they just don't realize it.
Yeah. I love talking to personal development people, and because I've been studying it for decades and decades, I always want to be the best version of myself I can possibly be. And, almost every personal development person I've spoken with tends to say the same thing, that we're pretty much all operating out of stuff that happened to us before the age of 8.
Yes.
Where stuff happened and we made decisions about here's how life is. Can you expand on that a little bit? Is that your feeling too?
Yeah. So let's just look at authority issues as an example. So a lot of time the authority issue comes up. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to go there. It's this child in us that is resisting that parent who told us what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, or that teacher saying that we need to study or sit still. And most people are essentially operating as an adult like a child. A lot of their reactions and responses as well.
Kind of like a robot.
Yes. And what I like to say is this is a really good question, because in my work, what I have found at the core of people's resistance issue is that they don't want to grow up. That's what it is. They want the success of an adult while still acting the way they are. They want the success of someone who does a preparation and gets a rep in without having to do that. And it's because they still have this unresolved child inside. And when we look at personal development and even the psychology of it, there's a concept called the inner child. And so a lot of times, one of the criteria, remember I mentioned there's beliefs, there's habits, there's comfort zones, there's authority issues. Well, one of the criteria is the inner child. So we can work on some of these other layers, but still experience resistance because we have this inner child that doesn't want us to grow, that doesn't want us to do these adult things because it feels like it'll be abandoned. And so when we have these childish reactions come up, it's this inner child that is doing it. And then it's called the inner child work. We have to work on soothing that inner child, one, and helping it understand that the decisions that we're making for adults why it's important and why that child won't be abandoned and things of that nature. So we humans are extremely complex. So, a lot of the things I've mentioned, I'm sure a lot of your listeners probably haven't come across, even though they have listened to a lot of your other podcasts or they're doing their own personal development work. And the reason I say that is because it's just complex. And so many of us can have multiple layers of resistance to work through before we can get the results that we're seeking.
Yeah. I'm thinking I still have some work to do on my inner child. Because,
well, I'm going to say,
go ahead.
Since you brought that up, and I think you're open to a little analysis, I think your need to go up on stage is that inner child. It's like, I want that attention, Yeah.
Absolutely, positively. I was going to say that if you spoke to any teacher that I had up until probably 8th grade, if any of them would remember me, and I don't think there's any reason that they would, but if you spoke to them and they did remember me, they would say, oh yeah, he never raised his hand. He just shouted out whatever he wanted. He was the class clown. His whole goal was get the laugh. And it's true.
And here you are as a comedian.
I don't like being told what to do to this day.
Yeah.
I like being told what to do if I say, what should I do? But unsolicited advice or tell me I got to do something, the automatic robotic reaction is, I ain't doing that. Yeah. Sorry, not doing that, pal. Yeah. And, I actually have to kind of step back and kind of take a look at, am I just resisting because it's my automatic pattern, or am I resisting for a reason? So I think I've got some more work to do, Kam.
Yeah. So I do want to say, your need to go up on stage and be a comedian, that's your inner child playing out. And then, as you just said, if you ask for advice, you're open to it. But if you get unsolicited advice, bam, there's a wall that gets shut down. And that's authority issues, which kind of play out from when we're young as well.
Yeah, and here's a perfect example. This is a good friend of mine and a highly trusted business associate, Mitch Tobel, who says, I love my inner child, but sometimes he wants to do things that I shouldn't. The reason I bring that up is because Mitch and I are in a networking group together for many, many years. He's a great guy. He's designed a website. He's a brilliant marketer. He's Mitch, the marketing guy. And he'll tell you. And by the way, he's pretty much the same way. We're in a group of about 25 to 40 people at any given time. And both of us, we can't wait to just shout something out to make the rest of the people laugh. Now, the facilitator of the group allows that because she's a lovely lady and she loves us both. And I think sometimes it might annoy the other people, but there's that need to be the center of attention, the need to get it out, and the resistance of authority, which everybody else always raises their hand. Mitch and I, not so much.
Yeah. And if I can add one more thing to his comment is, I talked about the tricks of resistance. Well, that's one other way that trick is showing up in his life. He's doing things that he likely shouldn't. And sometimes it probably goes well, but other times it probably doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's his resistance winning in keeping him moving forward and taking the next step and going to the next level.
Mitch says yes.
And there you go.
By the way, he's a very funny guy.
And I'm glad that he has the humor to admit it. Yeah.
Oh, Mitch could absolutely do stand up 100%. Okay. One of your books is on speed reading.
Yeah.
There's a gazillion books that I'd like to read and just don't get around to. I tend to fall asleep when I read because I've created the habit where I'll read in bed, which is probably not a great habit if you want to read, because I'm teaching myself, once you get into bed, you start reading and you fall asleep. But there's just so much that could help us do our job better, live a better life, be more successful. Is there a trick behind speed reading that you can pass on to us? Any quick tips that would make us read fast? I think I actually took the Evelyn Wood speed reading course, didn't do a damn thing for me. That was very popular probably 2 or 3 decades ago. Yeah. I think I might have even taken one other, but talk a little bit about speed reading and what do we need to know that would help us not only read better, but retain better?
Yeah. So I'll start by first adding to what you're saying, that right now there's so much content and we're living in a world where a lot of our lives are getting busier and change is happening so much quicker that it requires keeping up with more information, which means consuming more information. And one of them is through the written word, so reading. And so it's become extremely important that we read. And unfortunately, there are a lot of tools out there that I don't think really work, and all of them focus on skipping or summarizing, which isn't really reading. I think of reading as reading every word faster and understanding more. And there's a few ways to do that. And I want to first say that everyone already has the ability to read fast. They're just not using it. And the reason I say that is because I want everyone listening here, watching, even you, Jeff, to look up from your computer and just look around your room. Look at the table, look at the laptop, look at the closet and the books and all that. Your mind can process all of that so fast, you don't even notice the processing happen. You don't look in a direction and say, well, that object has 4 legs and a flat top, so it must be a table. And that thing over there, it's clear and it's got a frame around it, so it must be a window. You point your eyes in a direction and your mind instantly sees and understands what you're looking at. So I thought to myself, if we can process that, shouldn't we be able to do text faster? And the thing is, we can't. It's just that we weren't taught to. So the school system did a great job of helping us understand letters and how to combine letters into words and read those words, but it fell short in teaching us how to read multiple words and phrases at a time. And when we can do that, we're using our eyes' natural ability to read more information actually in a shorter time and to understand that information almost instantly. Because the way we currently read, we look at a word and then we have to process what the word means. But it's actually possible to look at a group of words and not have that intermediate processing step where your brain just understands it. And one of the techniques I teach, it's called space reading. And the way to do that is when we look at a word, our eyes instantly focus on that word so it can't see the other words. But when we look at the space in between the words, our eyes naturally see the words to the left and right and can pick up the meaning without putting any effort in. I know it sounds wild. So what I teach people is to, when they're reading a sentence, to look at the space between every 3 to 4 words and just skip between the spaces. And if a person does that, they'll be like, wow. And it works for, a good, I would say 50 to 60% of the people. And then for the ones that doesn't, I have other techniques that you can check out in my book, Speed Reading. Learn to read a 200-page book in 1 hour. And if people think that it's not possible, well, that book has over 5,000 reviews on Amazon, both in the US and international market. And you can't fake reviews in the thousands of numbers. You can fake them in the 2 digits and 3 digits, like 50s and 100s. Like you can get a bunch of friends to write reviews for you, but you can't fake that. So a lot of people are getting results on it. So.
Wow. Yeah. If I'm rereading The Lord of the Rings, I don't want to speed through it. I want to read every word. But if I'm reading reference materials or books that can help me do my job better or anything like that, I need to understand. I first of all, I've read The Lord of the Rings 13 times, so I could probably just say it by heart. But yeah, I want to savor every word. But yes. And I'm not trying to read fast. But if I'm reading, a personal development book, I want to read as quickly as I can and still get everything out of it. But I want to move on.
Sure.
I see we're quickly running out of time. But by the way,
we can go a little bit longer if you need to.
We have an hour. By the way, the audience is loving you. Another of your books is on mind mapping. Now, I know
So for a short on time, I would recommend jumping into the memory because I think that would be really helpful for the entrepreneurs and the salespeople.
Memory?
Yeah, because
we can talk about memory. Absolutely. Yeah. Memory, obviously, in sales, we use physical tools like a CRM, customer relationship management software. It helps us remember conversations, what they said, what I said, what the prospect struggles are, what they're trying to accomplish, when to follow up, all those kind of things. And for years, I have struggled to remember people's names. And I'm actually right now taking another course. There's a gentleman named Jim Quick, Kwik, who has a memory course. It's astounding. It's really astounding. I'm sure yours is just as good, but this is the one I happen to be taking. One of the things he says, because I've said for years, I suck at remembering people's names. And he said, first thing was, you can't be saying that because when you tell yourself you're stuck at remembering people's names, you're going to suck at remembering people's names. He also said, there's no such thing as a bad memory. There's only an untrained memory. So talk a little bit about memory. are there any tips? Why can't I remember people's names easily, whereas some people can? And do you have any tips for remembering people's names or remembering things in general?
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack here. First, every time I tell people what I do, they always say, "Oh, have you heard of Jim Quick?" And I'm like, because I always get connected to Jim Quick.
I get the same thing. Have you heard of Jeremy Miner? Yes, I've heard of Jeremy Miner. He's very successful.
Yeah. And second, I do like what he said, but there are some nuances that I don't think gets understood by people who are teaching memory. And one is that the reason you have a hard time remembering people's name, one is because you're probably saying I suck at remembering names. And as you know, in personal development, the more we repeat something, the more that ingrains into us. And that's what we end up acting out. In fact, it starts creating that belief that I can't remember names. So when we go to remember something, resistance filters through, oh, I can't remember names, so why should I even try? And then it becomes a feedback loop in not trying. And then, of course, since you don't remember, you say, I don't remember, and it becomes a runaway process. So the first thing that we should be doing is not saying anything negative about our memory. Even if we have a bad memory, we don't want to reinforce it. In fact, we should start saying positive things like, I have an excellent memory. I easily remember anything I choose. And these are statements I actually repeat every morning. I do say I have an excellent memory. I easily remember names, dates, facts, presentations, podcasts, and more.
Yeah, Jim says I have a limitless memory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And the second thing is our brain is actually designed to forget, and it's actively working to make us forget. And there are many reasons and advantages to it. For example, we come across so much information that one, the brain can't hold everything. And even if it could, it would be difficult to access it in a quick manner. So it throws out a lot of information that we come across just so we can manage the information that we have. Now, what's really important to understand is the brain doesn't remember information or hold information based on how valuable or important it is. Oftentimes, we think this information is too valuable or too amazing to forget, and then we don't do anything to remember it, and then we forget. The brain holds information if it is presented in ways that it's built to take in information. That's how it works. So that's another thing that's really important to understand. Don't assume that just because information is valuable that you'll remember it. You want to take action on remembering it. Now, what action can we take to help us remember a person's name? Well, there's different, like I said, if we use techniques that work within the principles of the way the brain is built to, then we're more likely to do that. So I have a very simple method that a lot of people really enjoy using is anytime you meet a person, the first thing is you want to pay attention to when they're saying their name. Oftentimes we tune out. So it's not like we didn't remember it, it's just we didn't even hear it. And the brain can't store what it doesn't receive. Sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how that could just change a person remembering it. And then the second thing is use a couple repetitions where you repeat the name back to the person. So let's say you and I meet and you say, hey, I'm Jeff. I'll be like, Jeff, your name is Jeff? Or hey, Jeff, nice to meet you. Just by saying that, it adds a repetition. And then very quickly, what I'll do is create a mental image of you in my head wearing a t-shirt that says Jeff. And then next to that image, I will create an image of somebody I know with the name Jeff as well. So I'm creating an association. So I remember I had a good friend named Jeff Young in college. So I would create a picture of him next to you. And then next to that, I would create an item that would trigger memory of you. Jeff sounds like maybe Jiffy peanut butter, right? So I might put Jiffy peanut butter right next to it. And that takes very quick for me to pay attention to your name, then to quickly say, hey, Jeff, nice to meet you, and then create that image and association. Now, what's really interesting is it may not seem like what I taught was all that much, but the next time I see you, seeing you is going to trigger memory of my friend Jeff. And if it doesn't do that, it'll trigger memory of Jiffy. And right away, I'm going to be like, oh, Jeff, hey, Jeff, what's going on? And what's really great is we can use this in networking events, meaning when we go to a networking event, we're meeting a lot of people very quickly. So let's say I meet you, and then after you, I meet somebody named Bill. So under the image I created for you, I'll create the same series of images for Bill. I'll see Bill wearing a shirt with his name on it. Then I'll probably imagine Bill Clinton, and next to that, a dollar bill. And the next person I meet, whatever. And so when I go home, I'll have this list in my mind. And anytime I see somebody, maybe if it wasn't even in that event later on, let's say I see Bill, as soon as I see that person, my mind's going to create that association to Bill Clinton or the dollar bill. And right away, I'm going to know it's Bill. But what's really cool is it'll also trigger memories of other people I have. And I'll know where I met Bill. It's like, oh, yeah, I met him at that event where I met all these other people. So this is a quick way to remember someone as well as where and with who.
I love the a T-shirt with my name on it.
Yeah.
I love that one. And you know, I'm not promoting Jim's program. I don't promote your book.
Yes.
But you know, in the first lesson, he gives you a list of 20 things, and you have to memorize the 20 things. But exactly what you said, you associate each thing with
Yes.
something else. So, like the number 11, skis.
Yes.
Well, skis look like the number 11. And I think the first time I went through the list of 20, I could remember 7 things. And the second time I remembered 13 things. And I quickly got up to remembering all 20 things. So it's training your brain, training your memory. Brilliant. There's something you said, though, that I want to ask more about. You said the brain is not designed to remember everything. However, everything I've ever heard about the brain is that we're only using at most 10% of our brain. So isn't that other 90% capable of doing some memory, or is memory only a small part of the brain? Do we need to create neural pathways to improve? I'd love to know more about memory.
Yeah, so this is kind of the challenge that I experience is there is a lot of stuff that's being fluffed in personal development. You hear things like you are limitless, you have unlimited potential, and things of that nature. And in many ways that is true, but we still have to work within the limitations of the mind and body. And that's why I've gotten so much success with my clients as well as people who buy my books, because I don't get into that stuff because it creates false expectations. And the reality is the brain just can't remember everything, one, and two, it will forget things if we're not constantly reviewing them. So we can spend all this time and effort learning sales, but if we're not practicing and applying it, it'll slowly start to go away. And people who come in with expectation that they can remember anything and it'll last forever usually end up going into self-beat up because they think they don't have what it takes, or that they're not good enough, or they're disciplined. When the reality is their brain is actually just built to forget. And this is a good time to talk about another trick of resistance, because I said the brain is designed to forget, and it's actively making us forget. And there's advantages to forgetting. And one advantage the brain has to forgetting is to keep you from doing what you resist doing. So if you have resistance to doing something, let's say making sales call, your brain will make you forget what you learned. Not only will it make you forget it, but it'll make you forget the appointments that you'll need to go to apply what you learned, or to do the thing that will get the result. So let's say the gym. If a person has made a commitment to get fit or healthy, and that requires going to the gym, and resistance is blocking them, well, resistance will make them forget when they were supposed to go to the gym, and that they were going to go 3 times a week turns into 2 times and 1 time. And before they know it, 3 weeks later, they're like, oh yeah, I had this goal of going to the gym, or I had this goal of going through this course, or I had this goal of applying Jeff's material. And they not only forgot what the information was, but that when they were going to apply it. So this is one of the reasons why also we forget.
And am I correct? There's also maybe a protection mechanism in the brain that particularly forces us to forget things. And here's why I say that, or ask that. I've seen childbirth twice. After the first time my now ex-wife gave birth, I said, "There's no way any human can go through that again." Yeah. I mean, have you seen childbirth?
I have not, but I can imagine it not being something.
It looks really, really painful. I'm convinced that if men gave birth, the human race would die out. Women are much stronger than men, but it's painful. I mean, at least my wife, I didn't see her going, "Oh, this is so great." I mean, she was screaming, and it's painful. So I'm imagining there's something in the brain that allows us, or maybe even forces us to forget pain like that. Because otherwise, how can anybody ever have a second, third, or fourth child? Am I right?
Huge. And this is actually something that comes up a lot. So if someone has had a traumatic event, especially like sexual abuse, especially at a young age, it's so painful that the brain just blocks it. And so I talk I'm talking about resistance round, but I've also developed a technique that helps people access and release their deepest emotional wounds from trauma, PTSD, bad breakups, loneliness, and stuff like that. And so what I have experienced is that someone has had a really traumatic event, their brain will not only block it so they don't even know it exists, but here's the interesting, they'll block other memories. So those memories don't trigger the memory that the brain is blocking. So oftentimes when I hear someone say, "Oh, I don't have much memories from before, I was 7 years old," or "I don't have memories from when I was in high school," there's usually something going on. And it's usually one or two major events, but because of the way the brain works, all of our memories are linked together. Accessing one memory could lead to that memory. So the brain will not only block that memory, but every memory around it. And so that's another reason why we might forget. And this can kind of show up in our work as well. So if a person is trying to become better at sales or getting more exposure and putting themselves out there, if they have an event where it doesn't go well and it's like really strong and triggering, it might block all these other memories and even the desire that they had to get better at sales. So that can happen as well.
Gotcha. Well, apparently somebody loves you, Kam, because my friend John said he went on Amazon and purchased your speed reading book. So you just sold a book. We've only got 3 minutes left, and I want to make sure I give you time to share your contact information. But there's something I have to ask. Could you maybe just give 60 seconds or 90 seconds on what is mind mapping and what do we use it for?
Okay. So mind mapping is a note-taking technique. A lot of times when people hear mind mapping, they think it's like mapping the mind, but it's really a different way of taking notes. So traditional methods of note-taking is writing information line by line, starting at the top and going down. Mind mappings differ because you don't start at the top of the page, but at the center and expand out like a spider web. And the reason that works so well is because of one of the principles of the mind, which is that all of our thoughts and ideas are not floating aimlessly in our heads. They're all linked to each other. And what that means is anytime we have a thought or memory, it'll trigger other thoughts and memories and ideas, which is why when the brain is trying to block a certain memory, it'll block other memories associated with it. So it doesn't access that specific memory. So if we can take notes like a mind map, we're actually taking notes and processing information in the way the brain is built. So you have one idea connected to other ideas that are related, and then ideas to them that are related to that. So when you hear one or see one idea, it'll trigger memories of all these others much more easily, just like how the brain works.
Yeah, I remember it being thinking how cool mind maps work because there's circles and things connecting and very cool. And I hate to say it, but we're out of time. Kam, I'm going to share my screen. Would you tell people because there are people watching live, but this will get converted to a podcast in a week or two. So for people who can't see, can you tell people how can they reach you if they're interested in working with you, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to get some of your books?
Yeah, sure. I've got 3 free gifts for everyone listening here. First is called Prompt Engineering for the Mind. The human brain was the original ChatGPT, and we can prompt it to give us answers and solutions just like Prompt GPT. So that's guide number 1. Guide number 2 is, interestingly enough, it's possible to build skills and habits in your sleep or practically in your sleep, especially if they want to build a skill of selling. And they can learn that from guide number 2. And the third guide is on this topic of internal resistance, where they'll learn more ways their wants get in the way and more causes of resistance, as well as more tricks that show up when we have resistance. And they can get all 3 of those guides on my website at kamknight.com. And if anybody wants to work with me one-on-one, you can go to coach or email me at coach@kamknight.com. As I mentioned, I developed a method that helps people go into their own unconscious to work on their resistance that are specific to them. And it's actually one of the deepest dives of breaking through and working through their blocks, it's like, I can't really say it, so I won't use that word, but it's the fastest way that a person can go from where they are to where they want to go. And they
Gotcha.
can email me at coach@kamknight.com.
And for those who are watching live, you can see how he spells his name. But for those who are listening, when this gets converted to a podcast, Kam is Kam and Knight is Knight. So it's KamKnight.com. Kam, I can't thank you enough for sharing your brilliance so generously with us. I greatly appreciate it. You're incredibly awesome and cool. And I really do appreciate the time that you've invested with us today. And I will end as I always do. Gang, please remember, sales is a game of making things happen. Get out there and make sales happen. If you live in the Northeast or anywhere that it's chilly, please stay warm. It might be a tough weekend, but have a great weekend. Everybody have a great weekend, Kam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. If I can just add one thing, if anyone who has resistance to sales wants to break through within just a few sessions, definitely email me at coach@kamknight.com because this method is phenomenal for it.
Thanks again, Kam. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks, Kam.
All right.